The Marvels is upon us, and as is par for the course whenever a new Marvel movie opens, the entertainment media complex would have you believe it is another triumph. No, for real, Deadline Hollywood literally called it a cosmic triumph grounded in sincerity and humanity. Meanwhile, Collider emphasizes that MCU movies can be fun because the audience evidently needs to be reminded of that now. The bad news for Disney and Marvel is that that's as good as it's going to get, because apart from some overtly enthusiastic headlines from friendly publications, the early reviews for the Marvels are so bad they won't even be able to game Rotten Tomatoes, which, as we're about to see, is part of Disney's MO. In this editorial, I will begin with how early reviews are cynically used to game the audience, how this movie apparently is so bad that won't work this time, and why that spells doom for the movie at the box office. The Marvels doesn't open for the general audience until November 10th, so where reviews are concerned, we won't get the final verdict until over the course of the weekend. Only then will all critics and audiences get their chance to give their verdict on the movie itself. That means that right now is the studio's chance to game the reviews and thereby review aggregators like Rotten Tomatoes as a means to boost the box office. Conspiratorial as it may sound, this is indeed studio practice, something we all suspected, but which was revealed in an exposé by Vulture earlier this year. We covered this at the time, and since this is very relevant to Disney, Marvel, and the Marvels, let's revisit an excerpt of that video. Where the trickery often begins is that Rotten Tomato scores are posted after a movie receives only a handful of reviews, sometimes as few as 5. Even if those reviews may be an unrepresentative sample. This is sort of like a cable news network declaring an election night winner after a single county reports its results. But studios see it as a feature, since with a little elbow grease they can sometimes fool people into believing a movie is better than it is. Here's how. When a studio is prepping the release of a new title, it will screen the film for critics in advance. It's a film publicist's job to organize these screenings and invite the writers they think will respond most positively. Then that publicist will set the movie's review embargo in part so that its initial tomato meter score is as high as possible at the moment when it can have maximal benefits for word of mouth and early ticket sales. They then provide the perfect example. In February, the tomato meter score for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania debuted at 79% based on its first batch of reviews. Remember, we always say never trust the first batch reviews for this very reason. Days later, after more critics had weighed in, its rating sank into the 40s. But the gambit may have worked. Quantumania had the best opening weekend of any movie in the Ant-Man series at 106 million. In its second weekend, with its rottenness more firmly established, the film's grosses slid 69%, the steepest drop-off in Marvel history. The full version of that video is linked to in the description, but there you saw it, not from us, but from a trade. Marvel rigged Quantumania. They tried to do that with the Marvels too. Problem is, the movie is, by all accounts, so bad they couldn't even rig it. We're about to get into the Marvels here, but to drive another point about it home, let's look at another example, and yes, I am going somewhere with it. First of all, not all reviewers are on the take, and even the ones that are can't be too obvious about it. We saw this with Amazon's The Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power. The first batch of reviews were all overwhelmingly positive, at the very least at first glance. But if you read a little bit deeper though, you could see that what at first glance read as positive reviews were actually negative reviews, only framed as positive. The giveaways were that they were filled with hedges, and the only thing they really praised were the visual effects, not the story, and certainly not the characters. The star example here is The Guardian, which for the premiere fulfilled whatever promise they gave Amazon with a seemingly stellar review, albeit one filled with hedges. And when it was all over, those hedges is what they leaned into when they said it was really shit all along, because now they had to save face in front of their readers. Well, so too it is with the Marvels, because even the positive reviews are filled with more hedges than were the Rings of Power reviews. The recurring theme in these reviews is that the stars have so much fun together, it's so fun to watch them, it's such a fun tone, the cast is so fun. Just don't think about the story, because that is quite shit. In fact, many dropped all pretenses and couldn't even bring themselves to pretend to give a positive review at all. The best reviews the Marvels is ever going to get are these ones, the first ones from the curated advance screenings. It's even worse if you go to top critics, which statistically are less on the take, as there the movie only scored in the 40s. What that means is that despite some positive reviews here and there, this movie is so bad that Marvel and Disney couldn't even rig it. Unlike the reviled Quantumania, which as we saw started out as fresh before it got exposed over its opening weekend, the Marvels will go into the weekend as already rotten. And here's the irony, you can't always trust positive reviews, but you can trust negative. Now, the only question as the weekend draws to a close is which will be the bigger figure? The Rotten Tomatoes score or the millions earned at the box office? Because now, chances are the two will be in the same ballpark. Let me know your thoughts on this and how excited you are to see the Marvels in the comments.